When I was a little kid, my family went to Nantucket, which is a little island in New England, and it's a beautiful place. Although I haven't been there in years, and it was a really nice time. And um, one side of the island faced another coast, so there weren't big waves. But on one side, it I believe was open to the ocean, so there would get pretty big waves, especially if the weather was getting a little intense. And we were we all went to the beach. It was my family and another family, and um, I can't remember exactly how old I was, but I think I was probably the oldest I would have been about 8, I'm guessing, but I think it was less than that. I was a pretty small guy. I remember that. And so I was really excited to get into the surf and play with the waves and body surf, and it was fine and fun for a little while. And then I was standing in the surf, and different waves were breaking on me, and all of a sudden, without me really seeing it, this giant, at least at the time, enormous wave came and just completely creamed me. Just like there was nothing I could do, and it just immediately knocked me off my feet, and I was sort of pulled underwater, and I was just spinning around and completely disoriented. And it was a really unpleasant experience. I just got creamed basically. And so somehow I managed to get up, and somebody must have been nearby and pulled me out of the water. And if memory serves, I was crying. I was very upset. And this woman who was the mother of the family that was hosting us, who they actually had a house there, and she said, it's okay. The waves aren't that bad. And she said, you need to know how to handle the waves and how to respond and how to see what's coming at you. So she said, let me take you, and we'll give this another try. And she held my hand, and that's why I remember I was small, because I was sort of reaching up or in the upward direction of her hand. And we start playing in the surf, and the waves are breaking over us. And then before you know it, all of a sudden, just like bam, just got creamed again. And not only did it pull me under, but it pulled her under. And I just remember being underwater and just flipping, over and over and over, and thinking that I wouldn't be able to breathe. And then finally I came up, and somebody pulled me out of the water. And at least for that moment in my life, I realized, like, you got to be really careful with big waves. And her trying to help me didn't really help at that moment. And But it was okay. And then, later, I mean, I will say my respect for big waves has never changed. It's not, I don't have a fear of big waves, but I have a respect for them. And since then, I've learned how to swim with the waves, and how to dive into it so it doesn't pull you under. But I've definitely learned how to respond to them in a different way. And like I said, I have a respect for them. So the reason I brought up this story is, there are moments in life where we just get creamed, just like bam, without knowing that something is coming. And usually it may be a big obvious thing, it may be a big event, but what I was really thinking about is sometimes we get pulled over or knocked over by our own emotions, and there's certain emotions that can come on very quickly, or they can start slowly and then kind of immediately peak. So it could be anger, it could be fear, it could be something like sadness, and there's nothing wrong with any of these emotions. But the challenge is that there's this moment where it can just really overwhelm you. And so I thought I would offer a couple techniques that you can practice to help you respond to them in the same way that I learned, first of all, a respect for large waves. And I learned some ways of dealing with them so that 95% of the time I'm fine. And for the other 5%, I know enough not to swim on that day or in that circumstance. So the first thing is to begin to sensitize yourself to when these things are coming up. I think the real challenge is it can seem that they come on out of nowhere and that there's no indication. So what we want to do is build in sort of an early alert system. And the way that one way that you can do this is by taking a moment, centering yourself, and then just inviting a little bit of that emotion. You know, pick one that maybe is problematic for you, and just invite a touch of it. You know, you may need to bring up a thought of a time or a circumstance that brought up that emotion. And what you want to do is just bring up just a touch of it and begin to notice what's the first thing that I notice in my body or in my thinking that lets me know that I'm going into that emotion. You know, like if you're going to take a bath, you dip your toe in the water. And so your toe is the first kind of response, or maybe it's the moisture in the air. But if, for example, if you want to explore this with anger, maybe you would notice, oh, you know, my breathing changes, or I start to tighten or hold my breath. So you want to look for any of the earliest indications. And then as soon as you notice one, stop, pause, take a break, and recenter. The way that I think about this is your centered state, your calm state, calm but connected. That state is your home base. And the first thing you want to do is establish a home base that you can get back to so that we practice getting back to that place where we're a-okay. So once you have that, just invite the littlest thing to notice what's the first indication. And then once you've got that early indication, just let it go, recenter, shake it off. And then again, center, and do it again and see if you can go a little further and notice what happens next. All the while as you're doing this, you want to continue to slow down the experience. So it's not, you know, I think in the beginning, it's like trying to get on the highway and going from 0 to 60 in a couple seconds. But what we want to do is we want to notice, okay, like my breathing tightened up. Okay, recenter. So I do it again. I notice the breathing again. So I'm reinforcing that first signal. And then I might notice like, oh, you know, I'm tensing up in my neck or something, whatever the second signal is. Again, pause, breathe, recenter, connect to yourself. And then do it again. Maybe you go just a little bit further this time. And each time you're reminding yourself to connect to your center and to keep touching base. And see if you can go further and further into that experience without getting completely pulled over. Now, let's say you do get caught in the undertow, like I did. You want to immediately shake that off to whatever degree you can. And if you're having trouble shaking it off, I would recommend take a break. I have a video on breaking states and getting out of negative emotions. And so do any of those things. Move your body, go for a walk, dance, watch some comedy, do anything to really shake it off. And then return to the exercise again. And you want to slow it down again. So center, notice just the first indication, breathe, Notice the second indication. Breathe. If you're noticing thinking, like maybe there's something you say to yourself, like, oh boy, or this person is, whatever it is, begin to notice, what's the tone of voice? What's the particular phrase that I need to say to myself? So those are also indications that you're slipping down this slope, right? And then again, pause, breathe, break your state, connect to your center, and again, look for the first indication, second, third, fourth, and eventually you're building a runway where you can still get back to home base. And that's the next step is when you go out into the world, the next time you notice like, oh, my breathing is constricting, maybe that's an indication, hey, this situation is heating up and maybe I need to take a break. Maybe I need to recenter. Now, I use the state of anger here, but like I said, it could be with sadness. It could be with overwhelm. Overwhelm tends to be, for many people, one that it just comes on suddenly. It's like you're going along, everything's fine, and then like, overwhelm. Or it could be fear. Fear is another great one. So again, take a moment to center first, establish your home base, and then very slowly go and look for the first indication, the first repercussions in your body, in your breathing, any internal dialogue, anything that you picture. And the minute you notice a new signal, take a break, recenter, shake it off, and then slow it down and go a little bit further and a little bit further until you can move into the state without being pulled in, without being caught in the undertow. So what I would recommend is, if I went to the beach that day and I got kind of nailed with that big wave, but I'm not somebody who goes to the beach, it's like, who cares? But if you have an emotion that's coming up in a consistent way, you may want to learn more about it. You may want to equip yourself with some tools so that you can then learn what's going on here. Once you learn how to not completely fall into it, then you can sort of get curious, like what's going on here? Like, what is it? How is it that I keep getting pulled into this situation? And then, very often, if you can begin to notice, what are the first indications, not just in myself, but is there something in the situation that lets me know, oh, I'm about to encounter trouble. It reminds me of, years ago when I first moved to New York, there were areas that were quite dangerous and you didn't always know what those areas were. But after living here for a while, I noticed what I should look for. And one thing that I would look for is if an area didn't have any people in it, that was a good indication that I should keep my eyes open, because it may not be a dangerous area, but if it was, then I would be by myself and I could be in danger potentially. But over time, first of all, the city's gotten very safe. But also, you learn what indications to look for, like that this may be a dangerous consequence or a dangerous context. So yeah, I recommend giving that a shot and take it slow, take it one emotion at a time, practice it. And I think you'll find in time that emotions that had been problematic for you are now something that can just move through your system and that you can flow with a little bit better. And maybe you can surf, maybe you can body surf, and begin to just move with your experience.